Hello everybody, welcome to the Gyrocopter Flying Club. A few days ago, AutoGyro announced that they were filing for what's called preliminary insolvency. The live stream video event didn't really give any insight to their issues, but it did highlight their corporate dynamic of having two CEOs, both of whom looked rather like rabbits caught in the headlights. So what's going on at AutoGyro? Well, privately I've heard that part of this process can be a workaround the fairly tight German labour laws that make it difficult to trim headcount. And this may be part of the rationale or one of its consequences. But actually, in order to prevent abuse of these laws and process, German state officials have to verify the financial health of a business making such a filing. And it goes without saying that things have to look rather bleak. We might remember that less than 12 months ago, the UK agent Rotorsport closed down their headquarters at Hackney Green, that they'd only moved to a few years before. They cited poor sales and high overhead. It's significant because the owner of that business is Mr. Jerry Spach, the CEO of AutoGyro Germany. Late last year, we also learned that there was new capital for the German manufacturer from a Middle Eastern investor. And this latest announcement suggests that whatever strategy was in place a year ago is not the one being adopted for the future. No doubt the global virus has had a huge impact, but the virus aside, the trouble for AutoGyro, to this commentator at least, is deep-rooted, and at its heart is some terrible planning, poor decision-making, and fundamentally people trying to do roles that they're incapable of and without focus. I realise that's a big statement, so let me start to qualify it. AutoGyro needs some leadership, and very sadly, I don't think that it has that currently. Here we have a company that sold in 2019 less than a handful of new aircraft in the UK. And whilst the UK is a very small marketplace today, that's only because of years of poor customer service, neglect, and frankly a pricing policy that became unrealistic. The UK is important because, as mentioned before, the current CEO founded the UK agency. The very popular sport model, for example, moved within a handful of years from a price point of around 50,000 sterling to over 75,000 sterling. And buyers of the old model, desperate to buy the new one, simply found that the market had moved too far away from them. The UK has 100 MT03 and sport models registered, and all should have been natural customers for the latest 2017 sport. To date, they have sold just 7 2017 sports, and 3 of those were customer demonstrators. To make that worse, there have been numerous build quality issues where aircraft have been shipped from the German factory requiring some form of rebuild by local agents, and some issues are due to a rush to market with either propeller, engine, avionic or design modification that either doesn't work or is untested. If you overlay that environment with the sales process that requires customers to have counterparty risk because of the large upfront deposit, and a foreign exchange risk because they price all aircraft in euros, and this latest announcement does nothing to help that situation. To highlight just how bad the customer service is, I know many instructors who would simply refuse to act as intermediary when their students wanted to investigate the purchase of AutoGyro equipment. Why? Because they simply didn't want the level of aggravation and embarrassment when the purchasing process inevitably fell over. Today, AutoGyro talk about family, but I'm not entirely sure how faithful they've been to that message in recent years. So how did it get so bad? Well, frankly speaking, they lost focus not only on the fundamentals of what makes a stable business, but they started taking the technical development of the aircraft in the wrong direction. Let's talk fundamentals. As I've already mentioned, the UK move to Hackney Green had no plan. They had a sales manager who was distracted with running of his own flying school, which also included a fixed wing element, and that also meant he was unavailable much of the time when customers came to visit the workshop or the showroom, whilst the workshop wasn't being run very efficiently, with staff there employed on a part-time or contract basis. You also had a boss that was hardly in attendance because of his role in a technical capacity in the German headquarters, whilst the German in the German headquarters lived a 3-hour drive away from the factory. And that all just seems far too casual. One huge market for this type of aircraft is the USA, and I think it's fair to say that AutoGyro's involvement in the US has been turbulent. It ranges from a senior US AutoGyro executive killing himself in an aircraft that was built by a West Coast agent that had fallen out with an arrangement created by an individual who had previously been employed in the UK before then moving to a competitor. Whilst today we can listen to other senior individuals tell everybody how easy these things are to fly, whilst at the same time horrendous accident rates prevail. Some of this stuff you just couldn't make up. Technically, the aircraft have evolved to become overpriced and overweight, whilst there's an over-focus on the development of the product towards a commercial application, which is unrealistic, not only because the people who are stakeholders in many civilian commercial aviation programs have either a military background where gyroplanes simply don't exist, or the operating procedures are merely cut and paste from prior helicopter or fixed-wing roles, which again excludes a gyroplane, or the presiding aviation authority has no precedence for gyroplane ops, and more likely it's a combination of all of the above. To top it all, a commercial operation, above all else, requires payload, and an aircraft such as a gyroplane that is limited to a dozen or so kilos with a full fuel load to give it an acceptable endurance means the whole thing falls apart. So it seems that the real growth for the aircraft is in developing countries such as China, India, Middle East and Africa, which may well make mature aviation markets irrelevant. But if that's the case, why on earth make these aircraft in Germany? The film suggests they aim to emerge from the current issues in March 2021, and there's talk of healthy orders from China and Africa, although I'm not sure how that squares with laying off workers. I have to say, unless they return to making more simple, cheaper aircraft with service that goes beyond the current proposition, I really don't see a future for the company. And its real commercial value in Europe is by piggybacking the airworthiness stamp from a territory that has global credibility. In the short term, any individuals placing deposits on new aircraft are doing so by closing their eyes and holding their breath.